They called it the unmakeable game, a project so ambitious it almost tore a studio apart. But its real story isn't about what went wrong, it's about a small team that tried to do something nobody else was even dreaming of. This is the story of Heart of Darkness on the PlayStation, a game that tried to blend Hollywood cinema with video games and created its own brand of a nightmare along the way.
What the heck was that? Whoa! Whoa! No, no, no!
In the early 90s, Eric Chahi was already a legend. His game, Another World, proved that video games could be more than just a series of puzzles. They could be art. He used rotoscoped animation and cinematic storytelling to create an emotional, immersive experience that was unlike anything else. After that success, Chahi had an even bigger idea. He wanted to make a game that was a true cinematic experience from start to finish. A game that had a big heart, a dark soul, and a sense of scale that would blow people away. He called it Heart of Darkness. Chahi and his team at Amazing Studio weren't just making a platformer, they were making a movie you could play. Their vision was to create a game with over 50 minutes of hand-drawn, cinematic cutscenes. The game would feature a blend of classic adventure and psychological horror, all centered around a young boy named Andy who has to save his dog, Whiskey, from the creepy, shadowy monsters of the Darklands. It was a strange mix, the whimsy of the Goonies with the dark, existential dread of the novel that gave the game its name, and the team was determined to make it work.
And he's... Imbecile! Please, Master! Maybe it's the boy in disguise! Oh no! Not the one against Oh, makes a change. Master, the boy's in your kingdom. Get him!
The core of Heart of Darkness was its unique art style. The team used a process called rotoscoping to create the main character, Andy. They filmed a real person performing all the character's actions and then traced over the footage frame by frame to create a fluid, lifelike animation. This wasn't just for the cutscenes, it was for the in-game character models too. The result was a character that moved with a natural grace and weight that was unheard of in games at the time. This gave the game an incredible sense of realism and made Andy feel like a real person, not just a bunch of pixels. The game's world was just as meticulously crafted. Every environment was hand-painted, with a sense of scale and depth that was truly breathtaking. The Darklands were a mix of lush, alien jungles, treacherous mountain ranges, and eerie, cavernous worlds filled with strange and terrifying creatures. The team used a variety of lighting and shadow effects to create a moody, atmospheric world that felt both magical and dangerous. The game's style was a blend of classic Disney animation and dark, surrealist art. It was a beautiful, haunting world that was both a joy and a terror to explore. The game's style wasn't just about how it looked, it was also about how it played. The gameplay was designed to be a seamless extension of the cinematic experience. There were no loading screens between levels. The transitions from cutscene to gameplay were so smooth that it was often hard to tell where one ended and the other began. This was a monumental achievement for the time and helped to create a truly immersive experience. The game was also a showcase for some incredibly inventive puzzles, which often required players to use their wits and their platforming skills to get past obstacles. From navigating through a maze of deadly laser beams to riding on the backs of giant, flying creatures, the game was full of moments that were as challenging as they were stunning to look at.
Are you an acrobat?
Acrobat!
What's your name?
Amigo!
Amigo what?
Amigo, amigo!
But with all this creative ambition came a massive problem. The sheer scope of the project was too much for the small team to handle. Creating a game with this level of detail and animation was a painstaking process that took years. The rotoscoping alone took countless hours of work. The team was constantly running into technical roadblocks and creative visions. They wanted to make the most beautiful game ever, but they were running out of time and money. The team's journey was a constant struggle against a shifting landscape. The game was initially planned for the 3DO and then the Sega Saturn, but as the market changed and those consoles struggled, they made the tough decision to pivot to the PlayStation and PC. Each switch meant reworking huge parts of the game just to get it running on the new hardware. After 4 years, the project's original publisher dropped its funding, leaving the team to work without pay for 9 months. When Infogrames finally stepped in, the pressure was immense. The dream of a perfect cinematic masterpiece began to give way to the brutal reality of a business deadline. The team had to make some heartbreaking choices, cutting ambitious ideas and scaling back complex animations. They were no longer striving for perfection, but simply trying to finish the game before the studio imploded under the weight of its own ambition. After what felt like an eternity, Heart of Darkness was finally released in 1998, and when it hit the shelves, the reception was a whirlwind of praise and criticism. Critics were blown away by the game's visuals. They praised the hand-drawn backgrounds, the fluid rotoscoped animation, the incredible cinematic cutscenes, and an epic orchestral score by Hollywood composer Bruce Broughton. The game looked and felt like a playable movie, and for many, that was a truly magical experience. It was an art style that had never been seen before and hasn't been replicated since. But the gameplay, while innovative, was often criticized for being too simple and frustratingly difficult. The game's controls, while good, weren't perfect, and a lot of players found some of the platforming sections to be unfair. The game was a visual masterpiece, but its gameplay was a bit of a mixed bag. Still, it was a modest success and a testament to the team's determination. The studio, however, was a casualty of the long and arduous development cycle. They had poured everything they had into the game, and there was nothing left. The team disbanded and the studio closed its doors for good. The game's creator, Eric Chahi, later admitted that the 6-year process had completely exhausted him. After the game was finished, he stepped away from the industry for over a decade, only to return in 2011 with the release of From Dust. The legacy of Heart of Darkness is a complicated one. It's a game that showed the world what was possible with cinematic storytelling in games, but it also showed the dangers of overambition. It's a game that was ahead of its time, but one that was almost a victim of its own success. It was a beautiful, unique game that tried to do something different and paid the price for it.